Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner, operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and I want to welcome you to our podcast today. What we do on the show is we take an individual film and we take it and analyze, critique, generally have a conversation about that film in order to give you a clear outlook and insight into this film, whether you have seen it or you have not seen it. Sometimes they are films that are very popular. Other times they are films that are not so popular. And then even further down the line from that are films that most of you have never even heard of, much less want to hear us talk about it. But we make every conversation entertaining and enjoyable, whether you've seen the film or not. In fact, most of the time, after we have talked about the film, you don't even need to watch the actual film if you haven't seen it. That may be the case with one of the films, or the film that we are discussing today. But first, I would like to tell you who my special guest discussing the film today is before we get to the title of the movie. Would be Dave Watkins. Thank you, Dave, for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
And he has graciously decided to kind of give us his amazing insight on the film The Creature Walks Among Us from 1956. Now, I know it's a world famous Universal Pictures monster classic film, but because it's the third film in the franchise, there's actually probably a lot of people who never bothered to watch this film. So let's dig deep into this film today, Dave, shall we? When about was the first time you saw this film, or what was your impressions? Because neither one of us were alive when this film came out.
Right. I probably saw it maybe first time 10 years ago, and I've seen it. I've only seen it a few times, but I think all three of the creature films. I do like the progression of what happens to the creatures, and this one, unlike the second one, I think this one's more creative than the second one. It is frustrating. I think what happens again to the creature. The creature gets he's really mistreated in all three films because in all three films humans come into his territory, and the first one they come into his territory and he just reacts to it, and then the second one they capture him, they put him in an aquarium, and then in this one he's escaped, got into the ocean. You think he's dead at the end of the second one, but here he is, not dead again. So, and so he's, you think he's dead, but he's not. And then these group of people have these doctors, and I guess a really rich guy wants to find him for sinister purposes that we find out later. But as far as my impression of the film, like I said, I do think it's got a lot of creativity. It's got some very puzzling and also fascinating stuff they do with the characters that you wouldn't expect. Unlike the first two, where they tried to have the love interest thing going on, this has some very like there's a very narcissistic character in this, and most of but it's also got kind of a hero type of character like the previous two films, but he's not really the main character like normally.
So, like you, I kind of saw this film maybe 10 years ago. I can't remember when I saw we discussed this in our episode where we talked about Revenge of the Creature, where I kind of saw both this one and that film, the second film in the franchise, about the same time when I purchased the Legacy DVD collection. I'd seen the first one many times before, but I had not seen the second or third one until I bought that. So it's relatively, recent that I've seen this film, and I'd only seen it once until we decided to do the podcast for it. So I've only seen the movie twice. It was not a film that impressed me when I first saw it, but when I rewatched it for this podcast, there is a section of the film I really, really loved about it. Because it's the third film in this franchise, and the fact that they tried to make him more human. There was something about that whole concept for some reason when I watched the film originally that it just didn't appeal to me, and so I never gave it another chance until now. I never watched it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to when I say frustrating part of the film. But also, I think it is a very creative way of going into this, because they didn't just remake it. They're a little creative in all three of them, even though we kind of after talking about the second one, decided it was kind of like King Kong, the end of King Kong. But this one is this one that some reason they try to make a like a fish man, but I do like the way in all three films they go in a different direction and they don't just redo the movie again.
I will agree with you on that. I will agree with that based on our conversation with the second one when I started seeing so many parallels with what they did with King Kong and this one, which almost seems like a mad scientist movie in regards to him wanting to change the metabolism of the creature. For the most part, I always loved the very first half of this film before that whole section happens because I liked the underwater sequences in this film more than I did in the second film. I think the underwater sequences are amazing in all three films, but in this film, I just find them as mesmerizing and beautiful as I did in the first film.
Now, the difference in this film than the other two films, this is the only one that wasn't shot in 3D. Now, whether that makes its underwater sequences look better and not 3D, I mean, it's a possibility.
Interesting. I forgot. Yeah, you mentioned that on our last podcast, and I completely forgot about that. That would be interesting to note whether or not that made a difference or not. I'm not sure.
I mean, really, I've never seen the other two in 3D, but I would like to do it. But apparently, it requires like a 3D special player and the glasses, which aren't that hard to come by. But the player is just to get a player just to watch a few movies in 3D. I don't know, but
I wonder. I wonder why that would be. I wonder why they haven't done a 3D version of this like they have like my original version of I got like 5 or 6 Anaglyph movies there in 3D. Like the Friday the 13th 3D version.
Yeah.
Which
with the Friday the 13th 3D from Shout Factory, well no, even you had to have the different player too, I'm pretty sure.
They just did the same file with the glasses, from my understanding. I've watched it once, and I don't like watching the old Anaglyph.
You're right. I just remember that. You're right. I'm pretty sure that's you could see it in 3D.
I think Coraline I had the same way.
Yeah.
But I can't. And then there's a couple other older films like that. I don't think I've ever seen Jaws 3D in actual 3D. I don't even know if they have a version of it that you can watch in 3D.
I know what movie I saw in 3D that was it the Andy Warhol Frankenstein film that I was able to watch that one in a regular player in 3D, which it was pretty cool, really. In 3D. But I would really like to see, like, I would think that the underwater sequences in the first two films in 3D would be a sight to see, especially on a bigger television. But
oh hell yeah, I would think so as well. Since of course the digital 3D TVs are not like something that's going off the shelves anymore. Since that whole heyday kind of came and went really fast.
Yeah. It'll probably come again. Give it another like 5-10 years. It'll be pushing 3D again out of nowhere.
But that being said, this movie, because it doesn't take place in the Amazon, it starts off in the Everglades, I believe, the Everglades.
Definitely in Florida.
Yeah, the ideal the cinematography for the locations when they're on the water. And before they get underwater are completely different and make for much more interesting cinematography for the first half of this film until they obviously capture the creature and then more or less subject him to genetic experiments and stuff. Early versions of genetic experiments and stuff.
Well, like there's you don't see the creature on screen for 15 minutes in this film. It takes, that's probably the longest in any of the films that you don't see him, because we usually see him pretty close to the beginning.
Yeah,
they're trying to find him from the end of the second one. They know he's out in the ocean, and there's a group of scientists. With some of them, the one thing about these characters, you got the main, who's really the guy who's top billed, the character William Barton, who's like this lady's husband, is controlling, like a rich husband who's a very, very interesting character, and he's got a lot of flaws, but he's also got a lot of money apparently, and he's doing this. He's wanting to capture the creature and change him, do some mad scientist stuff like you were saying. And then there's another guy named Dr. Thomas Morgan, who's kind of the good doctor who's with him, and he's there with a different agenda in mind. and then there is a guy who's with him named Jed Grant. Now, those three characters look a lot alike to me, especially Jed
Jed.
and Barton. Like sometimes, like I confuse them. You know, it's just like, why would they cast actors that look so close alike? It's like, I mean, the Jed guy's a lot bigger dude, but his face looks very similar to the Barton guy's face.
Well, and I noticed that too. And the only reason why I could say that, or I could say something about that, is that since neither one of those characters are really good characters, they're just trying to draw a parallel between the two bad male characters in this film versus the one good character.
Yeah, and it's all like the way that they're acting too. Even though they look a lot alike. Even the other guy, the good doctor, looks a little bit like those guys. He looks different, but he has the similar color hair and stuff. But his face looks a lot different. But there's the way that they act. The actors play the characters. You can tell which one's which, and some once you see what they're doing.
Mhm.
But but the Jed guy keeps hitting on the dude's wife. He's also got his wife with her. She's very like she's in a controlled relationship with this guy who's a clearly abusive, and she's just fighting him any way she can. And if this wasn't pre-code, she would probably be having an affair on him. But since not pre-code, it is during code, so they couldn't have her have an affair on purpose and get away with it. So, but the other guy's trying to get with her, and so there's a lot of tension between that. And he's also very jealous. Anytime he sees the Dr. Barton, anytime he sees his wife talking to some other guy, he's just about to lose his mind.
Which is very odd because he seems more concerned about his science experiment than her until she's getting the attention of one of the other guys. So
Well, she almost does it on purpose too, though. She's kind of lashing out because she doesn't like it that he's doing the experiment to begin with, and they're down there talking about science stuff and all this, and she gets out a gun and starts shooting sharks in the water, and then they come up and they're like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm just shooting sharks. I got a few of them." And then later on, when they go diving, she insists on going too.
Mhm.
So she says she's bored, and then she's like, she seems to be doing all this stuff just to lash out at him or for his controlling behavior. She's trying to. It seems to be that's what's going on. It may be her personality. She might have a spontaneous personality, but I feel like a lot of it is to get his attention and to really, I guess, in subconscious way, try to upset him.
I don't think well, you bring up a good point. I don't think she's trying to upset him on purpose. I think she's trying to not be the trophy wife that he thinks that she is. Her sequence up on the boat for me when she's shooting the sharks, she says that she's saving the porpoises from these two sharks. So so she's doing it that way. I do think that when her husband starts eliminating her from the conversations with the other men, and she wants to, she goes diving regardless of what her husband says, and she does a lot of things regardless to what her husband says. It's not only to prove that she's, a strong-willed woman that can take care of herself, but also someone who is not going to be put down by her husband, who just thinks of her as a trophy wife that's just going to sit there and do nothing the entire time. We see that more later in the film where he gets really mad at her, and then she just kind of acquiesces to that.
Right. To me, it's like that dynamic in this film is very unique.
Yeah.
It's definitely not what you would expect, especially after seeing the other ones, and you got kind of these kind of sappy, like cute little love things going on between the main characters. Mm-hmm. This one is none of that, and it's very like it makes it unique, and it also makes her like a very interesting character.
No, I agree with you on that one. I like what they did with the character, and what's his face, Morgan, the other guy, is not overtly trying to get with her the entire film.
Right, and he's Go ahead, sorry.
No, I think that creates for. He literally stays there because even though he looks down upon what Barton's doing to the creature, he's still curious as a scientist and a doctor to see if actually he might be correct or he could be wrong. It's a question of his own ethics versus whether or not it's something that you could actually do. what Barton is trying to do, which is really far out there, fringe science, so to speak.
I think that there's some very good conversations between Barton and Morgan where they kind of debating their points of view and a kind of very thought provoking conversation. But the Morgan character and the way that he acts, it's kind of like the character, not like this. There's a character in the second one that doesn't do what this guy does. What he does in this movie is really good because he keeps his calm. He's got very level headed. He doesn't do like I'm a doctor and I'm all brainy. He just kind of keeps his kind of like really calm level, and he doesn't like do it in a way that's like overly authoritative.
No, and I think he's one of the better. I like his character more than I did the main character in the second film.
Yeah.
I found him more interesting overall, and I think the dynamic that he has with the other characters is much more interesting. Like even though Barton is a very despicable character in this film, because all he cares about is everyone doing what he tells them, which is what he tells to the Grant character. Like he more or less orders Grant to go and create a costume or clothing for the new the creature, because he didn't have any clothes. So like, well, that's not really his job, but okay. Just tells him to go do it.
Yeah, he whatever. The thing is, the dude's like he's clearly a really rich guy when you see his house later, and he's used to people doing what he tells them to do. And he, even like there is one point when they're all sitting around drinking, and the Morgan character, he sits down by him, and then he wants to discuss this metabolism thing with him, and he's like, let's just celebrate. I don't want to get into a big deep discussion, and then he doesn't let him just celebrate. Then he's like, no, we're having this discussion right now, and he pushes him to have the discussion until the point that the other doctor's like, all right, I'm going, pretty much. But he gets what he wants, and he's a very unlikable guy, and people don't really. They fear him in a way. They don't really want to be around him as very much. They definitely want to take his money, but they don't necessarily want. They know if they're around him too much, he's gonna make them do something ridiculous that they don't want to do.
No, I agree with you. That scene, that party scene after they unveiled the creature, after everything that they've done to him, and they think they've made some type of a success, and Barton just wants to celebrate what they have, and it ends up being a conversation where all the other doctors walk out, and then he and his wife have a spat, so to speak, and you see that she really is just a trophy wife to him. But despite the fact that he has all this money, when this other scientist decides to not just go with his program 100%, he gets offended. Thankfully, they have enough gumption to walk away before he has his little tirade.
Yeah. Well, too, he's like on top of that, he's drunk at that point, but he Well, and he's also he is a control freak though. And if he doesn't get his way, he's gonna obsess over it until it happens.
Which makes for this film, and these characters have a much different dynamic than the other two films because of the relationships between the characters. I'm not sure 100% why Marcia is even on the boat.
Right. Yeah. Well, you got to have a female on there.
You got to have a female. But I like the second film. She's very much a scientist, and she insists with what's going on in the film. First film, she says she's a scientist, but I don't recall her ever doing any scientific things. She just gets
right.
Yeah.
The second one's really the only one that gives it like a good reason. I mean, this character, Marcia, she she has a reason to be there because she is like Barton's wife, and he's insisting that she's there, and that's why she's there. As far as like if you want to look at it script wise, I mean, obviously, but that's like why she has to be there, because he's not going to let her stay home by herself. He has to watch her and make sure that she doesn't like sleep with any other guys.
Oh my god, he makes for such a despicable character, which is why I love what happens to him in the final act. Um, but we for those of the people out there who haven't actually seen this film, we want to make note of the fact that this movie is very different in that once they capture the creature, the Gillman, what's his name? Barton's whole function is to try and change the metabolism of the Gill Man in order to create a person that can go into space. Now I don't know all the details because they don't even actually skirt all the details themselves, but essentially they want to change his metabolism
Yeah.
in order to achieve that. This whole space program thing that he has, his dream.
I must have missed the space part, but yeah, I believe it. There's definitely some conversations in the first 10 minutes where he has a conversation with Morgan about their real purpose behind it, they have this debate against what he says metabolism, but it's also from the second one where they talk about evolution, and they're trying to do a forced evolution on him to kind of make him what would have happened had he gone through true evolution. So they're trying to force evolution on him to make him more progressed or more human like.
Yeah.
This one thing we didn't touch, which is a pretty cool sequence, is when they do capture him because they're on this boat, this big ass yacht, I guess is what you would call it.
Yeah, this was a yacht. They have more money.
Really big. And they're out there in the ocean trying to get him, and they can't get him that way. So they're like, okay, so we're going to go to his territory. So they go off into like a tributary, like a river off to the side on this really small, dinky boat. And they got sonar equipment. So they've got the sonar and they're able to see where he's at. And then he finally comes up and attacks them on the boat, and they catch him on fire. And he gets completely caught on fire, falls back in the water. Then he picks up the boat and knocks a bunch of people off of it before crawling up on a rock and then laying there because they hurt him so much with the fire. But that's one of the better sequences of the film, though, is when that happens.
Well, and the thing about this, and I've already touched upon this. Before we get to that, I wanted to make mention of the fact when we first see the creature in this movie, the whole underwater sequence, I think, is freaking phenomenal. When the two men are down in the water, and of course, Marsha has gone down there with them against the Barton's better judgment, and she kind of steps away from the two men. And she does this really cool, elaborate fucking dance thing in the water. It takes up a lot of time in the movie, actually. And you think that she's perfectly fine doing all this type stuff, of course. But then she takes off her fins, and then the only stupid part I had is that their explanation why she faints and all that is because she went too deep. Well, in reality, when you're watching the cinematography for this amazing sequence, she actually goes really deep with the guys, then she separates and goes up. So it doesn't really, that explanation doesn't make sense, but I forgive it because the cinematography for that sequence and the way in which they integrate the creature underneath her is in certain aspects, and with the two men who are off in their own little worlds as well, is really, really cool to watch and to see.
Well, I think that now one thing we could think about is they come up and they say that she went too deep.
Yeah.
But that might be their explanation because they went off without her and she was doing her own thing and took off her stuff and overexerted herself. But even before they got in the water with her, there was like some warning because that's not like them. She doesn't have as much experience diving, and there was some warning about her not going too deep because they said, how far deep are we going? 50 foot? And they're like, we're probably going to go 150 foot deep, which is 100 foot deeper than what she's used to doing.
and what's his name? Morgan tries to tell Grant to take his depth meter. So because he's over there saying, I know how deep I can go. Well, you won't get a second chance to take the depth meter with you.
Yeah. There's some pretty good technology already in this film that they have access to, like for water stuff. There's some pretty good technology already had been invented by the time in 1955 or 1956 when this movie was made.
And they made mention of technology in this, and that's another big theme of this movie in particular is technology, evolution, and stuff that they're doing that in theory you can't do right now, but they think they can in the future. They're using all the latest technology in this movie, and they're explaining it to everyone, and you're seeing it being used, and of course their ideal of evolution and trying to force the Gill-Man into a forced evolution and stuff like that. These are some really. This is probably for me the most sci-fi of all of them. I mean, they're really going into that more. And I don't even think there's as many deaths in this movie as in the other two. To be honest with you,
No, there's not. But there is some like some different types of deaths, which makes it different. But this as far like. It's weird. They capture him at about 45 minutes into the film. Mm-hmm. And then after that, for the next 15 minutes, they have him on the boat still, and they do all this weird mad scientist surgery on him to change him. So that's it's kind of just an odd amount of time when you think about it, because he got 45 minutes and then that, and it's weird that they do all that on a yacht, on a boat. And like when you see the interior rooms of the boat, they look very, very much like an office, or a hospital.
Yeah, but they show they show him at the very beginning. They show Bart in the room with all the utensils and stuff that he's going to need, and he's very appreciative of how much stuff that they actually were able to get him for his experiment. That's why I said the whole thing about technology and stuff is explained in this film more so than any of the other ones, because they go out of their way to make sure that back in the 50s that this could have been scientifically possible. We just didn't know it at the time, but they go out of their way to kind of show that it could be.
Right. Those other two doctors that are there with them, they have a pretty unique look. They look different than the other characters, so you can tell them apart pretty good. One of them's got like a mustache, and the other guy's he's a little chubbier. But but I do like the way they at least cast those two guys in a way so that they look different than the other characters.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, most definitely. And it also makes it like this is, even though all three of the films have a pretty big cast in regards to the scientists when they're doing their whole going into the Amazon or capturing the Gill-Man. This is the film where these scientists are used the most, because they're in there for, like you said, the first 45 minutes before they capture the Gill-Man. And they're doing a lot of talking about what they're doing. And so we get to know these guys a lot more, especially the second one. We get to know these people a lot more than we did in the first two movies. I mean,
I mean, I think it's definitely like I said before, it's cool that they went a different route with it, and they eventually have him on the table, and they some really odd things happen. Like his eyes are burnt, they remove his eyes, and suddenly he's got human eyes. I guess they're doing some other type of experiment stuff on him that they talked about before. but I mean, I guess in a way we could kind of go with it. I think that that's the part that frustrates you the most about it, is that they change him into something different, right?
Well, the thing is, it's one of those things where if it was David Cronenberg doing this movie, it would be a cool body horror movie.
Yeah.
But with this one, because it's a 50s movie. In this day and age, a lot of the stuff, the science that they're doing seems very hokey. Kind of like watching the original Frankenstein, and you're watching Frankenstein with all the buttons and levers and stuff, and it's all kind of hokey when you watch it. But in the 50s, this was like cutting edge to those audience. They'd never seen stuff like this before. So it's interesting in that aspect, if you could put yourself into that time period. I didn't like the look of the reveal for the creature once he's gone through his whole evolution thing. He seemed like a big muscle, what do you call it? A bodybuilder, without all the coolness, because he's wearing this homemade fucking costume where you don't
He
get to
looks,
see the
yeah.
grandeur of him.
He looks like, yeah, he looks a lot bigger all of a sudden. It's like all of a sudden he's like
Yeah.
a big dude. Like before he looks kind of skinny, but maybe it's the clothes they put on him. So,
I always attribute that to the different. From my understanding, I know in the first film they had different people wearing the costume when it was in the water versus out of the water.
right, right.
This movie, he's that whole last third of the movie when he's walking around. He's not required to go into the water. They've got, and they probably don't even have a full costume on him at this point.
No, it's just the head and the hands.
Yeah,
I would think. Yeah.
I'm thinking it could be a freaking bodybuilder underneath because that's what it looks like. It looks like a giant bodybuilder compared to the skinnier guy that you see diving and in the water the first half of the
Yeah. Well, what's weird is like if you look on like Wikipedia under the cast, there's only two people listed as the Gill Man, one in the water, one on the land, and there's scenes with him on the land or out of the water when he's the regular Gill Man too. So I don't know if it's really a third actor who's unknown or if it's if the bigger actor is the same actor as the one that plays him when he's out of the water, like because he comes out of the water when he's on the boat on the little boat when he comes out of the water and he gets burned,
Yeah, yeah. And there's something to be said about I don't know if you like the change and the more human. I mean, I could see why they would do that for the third film in the franchise to make it completely different than the other two films. But for me, I didn't care for the look of the film, but I didn't like the progression in terms of the story because the very first time that the Gill Man escapes, he tries to immediately goes back into the water. And I think it's Morgan who has to go.
Yeah. Morgan, I think, goes and saves him.
Yeah, Morgan saves him, but it's not a quick save. The first time they encounter each other, the Gill Man obviously is trying to kill Morgan, but then, the Gill Man is also about to die because he can't breathe. And eventually he gives in and takes the help of Morgan. And I find that fascinating for the story because as the story progresses, by the time the Gill Man finally escapes and goes after Barton, it becomes a story of, well, Barton hurt him, therefore he goes after him and not goes after Morgan when he has a chance, because he does have that sequence where the Gill Man sees Morgan and Marcia together, but he doesn't do anything to them. I like the progression for the story. I just don't like the look of the Gill Man.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I don't necessarily hate the way that it looks, but I could see I could see where you wouldn't like it. I do like the idea. I do like the ideas behind it and what happens and just the fact that they turn him human and then they try to make him not think about the water, but he can't. But he can't stop thinking about the water. In that sequence when Morgan saves him underwater, what makes him start to trust him because he goes under with a tank of oxygen and he takes that out of his mouth and he puts it into the creature's mouth, and when the creature's able to breathe from that, he's able it's like I had a dog one time. We had basically there was a dog that we saved, but he was kind of feral and he'd bite the shit out of me at first, and then it was her, and then I put her in the bathtub and she gave her a bath and she bit me while she was in the bathtub, but after she realized I wasn't trying to hurt her, suddenly she stopped being feral. So it's almost like once they realize that you're trying to save them then suddenly in a lot of instances they will like do what he does, and he kind of likes the Morgan character and even the Marcia character.
Yeah, and that's the other great thing about this movie is he doesn't go after Marcia. He goes after the person that hurts him. So it's not like the dynamic for this is a much different type of film, and I can appreciate that for the third film in the franchise.
But even before that, they put him in this cage with these goats, which is kind of inhumane, I guess. But
yeah,
but he's used to being out in the wild, so and he's not a human, even though he kind of looks more human. But they put him in there with these goats, and he kind of gets a connection with the goats. And then this I think it's like a, was it like a panther or like a tiger or something comes up, gets into the cage and starts trying to kill the goats, and then he kills the tiger. And then so that's why he's defending
Yeah,
his, he's defending what he's defending what he considers to be his goats or his
territory, his
yeah,
surrogate
yeah.
family. They don't go
Yeah,
into
yeah.
details exactly, but you can understand the point that they're trying to make there. Uh,
And they even have some conversation about it between Morgan and Barton again, where he talks about he describes it as hereditary versus environment, but it's more of a what we know to be as a nature versus nurture
yes,
now. But they talk they say it differently here, but that's pretty much what he's saying. That's what Morgan's the most interested in is if we're kind to him and we nurture him, will he still want to kill? Will we be able to tame him in a way that he's not going to want to kill people? And they kind of get him to that point until the nature takes a different turn when he sees Barton's true nature, and he decides to try to help. Well, was it like basically the Barton character, which is this is like a cool scene because the Jed character who's been hitting on his wife the whole time, he finally gets enough of it, and he goes into his room, and he tells him he's got to go, and he pays him a bunch of money, and then he gives him the money. He's like, get out, And the guy's like, all right, fine. And then the guy's walking away, and the guy just won't keep his damn mouth shut, and he keeps talking smack about the guy's wife until the guy Barton just flips out and hits him over the head with a gun and kills him. And then the creature sees that violence, and then he feels that he needs to go after Barton after that. I know I've jumped ahead actually, because then Barton, what Barton does is he sees the creature. The creature's not hadn't flipped out yet. He sees the creature and he wants to frame the creature for killing Grant. So he takes Grant's body and throws it
yeah,
in there with the creature, and that's when the creature's like, "Nah, I'm not letting this happen." The creature's the whole time he's been in this cage. And the creature just goes over, grabs the door, and rips the whole fucking door off. So he could have gotten out the whole time. He just chose not to because they were being kind to him. And then he relentlessly goes after Barton in a pretty awesome sequence.
I was about to say the same thing. I actually really
Yeah,
like that sequence.
yeah,
I do. I once he goes after Barton, I do enjoy that sequence because they do a really good job with filming it. And Barton, you actually is the character you want to see get his comeuppance too, because he's been so mean to not just the creature but to generally everybody.
yeah, yeah. And that other guy that he killed, though, the Jed Grant guy was pretty ridiculous too. Though it's kind of okay seeing that guy get killed, but then him trying to frame the creature would have gone against the whole friggin' experiment that they were working on.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're watching this film, everyone, the creature goes pretty hardcore after Barton.
Yeah, I love it though when he just tears open his cage. It's just so funny. It's just so hilarious that he could have done it the whole time, and he's just like, you know what, fuck you, I'm coming after you. Because the Morgan guy thinks everything's fine, and then you can see the look on his face. He knows that he's fucked. But it's so great.
Yeah, but it's a cool sequence. Also, that's a great visual. But it's also when the creature finally gets a hold of Barton, lifts him over his head,
Yeah,
and throws him out the window.
yeah,
I think it's 2 stories or 3 stories.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of like what he did in the second one when he took that one guy and threw him against a tree. But here, like Barton actually deserved that under like the guy in the second one.
Oh my god! And then after that, I think this was much different because the creature just kind of walks away after that.
Yeah,
This is a much different film because there is no rampage. But the last time we see, and we see the other characters, Marsha, and we see Morgan later on. But what's really interesting is the last scenes we see of the creature, because you hear, I think it's a radio announcement that Morgan and Marsha hear about sightings of the creature, and of course we see the creature walking up to the ocean. We're assuming it's the ocean, the washing up the ocean, and he just looks at it. He stares at it. His home, but the last shot of him is you see him walking towards it, but we don't see what happens afterwards. It's kind of a bittersweet ending because he wants to go back home, but we also know that he can't go back home.
Right. They do make some comments.
Yes.
During the film, like the Morgan guy says maybe his gills will grow back, and then the Barton guy's like, no, his gills aren't growing back, and that's not ever going to happen. So, but they did kind of implant that thought that his gills possibly could grow back, and if they did, and they made a fourth film after this one, which they didn't, then maybe he could go back to having gills. But that was maybe that. But of course, this was a coded movie. The creature had to die at the end, even though he doesn't die. He doesn't die in any of them, but it looks like he's dead.
Yeah,
so there's always, if they make another one, they'll come up with some excuse or not even tell you exactly what happened. But here though, there's two things. I mean, there's two possibilities. He goes to the water, and when he goes into the water, and Morgan saves him, he's going to drown. He was going to drown from being in the water because he thought he could breathe, but now he maybe doesn't. Maybe he knows he can't breathe. So I don't know if he's going to go into the water like a human and treat it like a human would treat the water, or if he's going to go into it like the Gill Man and drown.
No, I mean, we don't know. If they had done the fourth film, we would have known because they would have had the Gill Man come back.
Yeah, he would have grown those gills back if they had a fourth one.
Well, they left the door open. If they were going to do House of the Creature from the Black Lagoon or something like that, they could have done that.
Crossover
film. But the thing is, because the Gill Man never crossed over to any other franchise.
Other than like the Monster Squad, I guess. But he, but this was the last of the Universal films. I think all the crossovers had already happened, with the exception of Abbott and Costello. And he did appear on some kind of Abbott and Costello show. I don't think he appears in the films, but he did appear on their show at some point. What I read,
I know it's going to be bad for me to say, but I've never been a big Abbott and Costello fan. Which is
I agree. I do like the way that they did the monster team ups, but they're not. The humor's dated. The first one is pretty good. The one that has Bela Lugosi actually in it, playing Dracula again.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good to see him and seeing some like Lon Chaney Jr. and some of the other guys back in there. But I mean, I agree. They're not necessarily. It's just the humor's a little dated in it.
One day, if we get bored enough and we've already done all of the other Universal horror movies, we might get around to those.
Yeah.
So, talking about the last thing we see of the main characters, not the Gill Man, since you already saw the Gill Man, we see the Marcia and the Morgan character, and I think Morgan. What happens to them at the end? Shit.
Now at this point, the husband's dead.
Yeah, the husband's dead.
So it's okay for Morgan to hit on her. He can pass code with that because the husband's dead, and he can hit on her now and they don't have to worry about his character having to have the consequence of him hitting on her. So he does lightly hit on her, still not over the top. She's like, "Am I going to see you again?" He's like,
"Yeah, that's it."
He's like, I hope. You get to see her say farewell to the other doctors, and she's like, she's definitely not seeing them again. She's like, bye. And she's like, oh, am I going to see you again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right about the whole code thing, though. It's interesting the way how that's integrated into the mentality of this film, and not just for this film, but the previous film that we discussed as well.
But a lot of this is just hindsight looking at it. Now, when you're watching the movie, I'm not necessarily thinking that. Sometimes I do think it because I'm like, if you start thinking about it, it's going to drive you a little crazy because you got to watch when someone does something bad, they have to pay the consequence. Unlike now, they can do something bad and at the end of the film not even go to jail or anything. They can even like not say that they did it, which it makes it a little frustrating sometimes because you know that somebody's going to have their comeuppance no matter what. But sometimes it's good because you get to see that comeuppance for somebody that you want to see it happen to.
Yeah.
But it also takes away some layers from storytelling because you can't make a character. Well, it does help it too because the character like Morgan, it makes him more of a calmer, cooler character because he's not like focused on her. He's not thinking that he wants to like. He's like she's got a husband. I'm not even going to go there. And he has a conversation with her at one point near the end where the husband's still there, and she's like talks to him about how I guess she's scared of her husband or something of that nature. So that's like the closest kind of conversation they have while the husband's still alive. But it's not, he's still very respectful to her. He doesn't try to, he keeps like a distance from her. He
Yeah.
doesn't try to lean in and get in her personal space or do anything creepy, you know?
No, that's a good point. He doesn't get into a personal space like Jed does throughout the entire film, or Barton, who believes it's his God given right since his wife.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about this film as the capper to this creature trilogy? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think it works. I mean, I think it, like I said, it can be a little frustrating if you don't want the creature to be turned human, but it kind of goes along with what they established in the second one with the evolution talk and then they try to force the evolution on him. They talk about in the second one about him not being caught in one place and not having being subjected to evolution, and then here they try to force it, and then it is like a sad, I mean, a kind of a sad ending, kind of like I say, you said bittersweet. I was trying to think of a different, but that's a good way of describing it, where you see him trying to look into the water where that's where he wants to go and he can't go. So is it tragic? That's the word I was looking for. It is a tragic ending, though. With tragedy, in this tragedy, it's a possibility that it could work out in some
Yeah.
other way.
No, I mean, the thing is that when I rewatch these movies, of all the franchises that came about with Universal Monsters, this is the one in which I think the films actually made for a cohesive whole. All three stories. And it's only because you mentioned to me that you thought of the Gill Man being the same one in all three movies. I originally was not thinking that way when I watched the movies, but now that is now embedded in my psyche, and that will never be changed again unless someone tells me that they're not the same character.
Well, it's even mentioned in the films
Is
that
it
it
really
is.
mentioned?
Yeah. Well, I would think that one reason why it wouldn't be mentioned is for code purposes, where they had to kill him in the other one. Maybe they can't just outright say it's the same one, but at the same time, it is implied that after the second film that like
Yeah,
why because and then also they go to the Amazon in the second one to get
yeah.
him. So that it has to be the same one then. And then they get him and then they bring him back. I guess it could be a second one, but they act like it's the same one. But it does have a different suit. But and at the end of the second one, he's in the Florida. So there's no way that the one in the third one is a different one. It's a possibility that the one from the first one isn't the one from the second one. Maybe there's a second creature there in the Amazon, but
No,
um
now to be honest with you, I didn't realize it wasn't the Amazon until I rewatched the movie. My impressions were it was just a different person in the second movie than the first film, and then that mentality stayed with me when I watched the third movie. Because I didn't think about it that the third movie takes place in the Everglades, and that the first film ended in Florida.
right, yeah.
I didn't even think about that connection until you made that connection for me. I was like, oh shit, you're right. This has to be the same creature. Because in the very first movie, we see a skeleton of the hand of the creature that prompts the entire expedition to begin with. So there could have been more of them out there. We just aren't seeing them.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I mean, we don't ever see it, but yeah, it's possible. And then the first one gets shot, but in the first movie, but he could still live. I mean, he's got these scales. It's like dragon scales sort of thing, where the scales could make even though he gets shot, it hurts him, but he's able to recover
Yeah. Well, in the
eventually.
third film, the Gill Man is shot several times, and in the very last sequence is you actually see the bullet holes in him where he bled,
Yeah.
which I hadn't really thought about until just now making mention of it. So he actually, has been shot, and it doesn't seem to phase him, even if he's got bullets in him right now.
Yeah, right,
You
yeah.
know.
Yeah, he has some kind of he can maybe recover from that. It doesn't say that specifically, but they seem to be very interested in his DNA and changing it.
No, but like I said, I think this is one of the Dracula films are all self-contained. The Invisible Man films are all self-contained. There is no logic to the progression in the Mummy films. You might as well throw that out the window.
Yeah, but they, yeah, it seems like they tried to do it, but something happened with that location between that one where they ended up in New Orleans. They were like in a different, completely. They're like in Maine or something, or New Hampshire, I think. And all of a sudden, the next movie, he's like in the swamp in New Orleans, but it kind of picks up. But it just they changed the location, and then everyone's talking like was it?
Actually, you might be able to get away with maybe the Frankenstein movies, but I can't remember the latter Frankenstein movies with the logic for those. Um,
Right. Well,
like,
they always tried to do them. The Frankenstein, they always tried to make them connect, but they had issues. I think with the Mummy they did it too, but they would always have something would happen production wise that would like not let them do it the right way. Where like when they had to move to New Orleans because that's where they had to shoot the movie, and it's kind of hard to hide it. So it doesn't.
I I'll have to reserve my opinions of the Wolfman films because I honestly, other than the first one, I've only seen the other ones once, so I don't remember anything about the other Wolfman movies.
Well, the Wolfman is only in the Wolfman movie and then the combo movies. Like there was a
Oh wait, that's right because there's the
yeah,
She Wolf is on that one, isn't there?
yeah, and then it's like Wolfman, and then there's also an older one called the some other werewolf is something else. I think it
That's
might have been
right.
Werewolf of London maybe or
I
something.
think that's the She Wolf of
Yeah,
London, not the
yeah. But he ends up being in was it
House of Frankenstein.
House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and there's also I think it Frankenstein versus Wolfman. There was a team up of him and another one. I think it was. I'm trying to. Yeah, I think it was Frankenstein versus Dracula. I mean Wolfman.
And that, dear gentle reader or listeners, is why we are going to have to go through all these movies because me and Dave have not, we can't even keep the logic between the movies straight until we rewatch them again.
Yeah, it's been well. Yeah. I should remember that one. I've seen that one a few times. The second Wolfman movie was not. It was like a team up though. It wasn't like straight Wolfman the second time.
I have to go back and look at my Legacy collection and see what's on there. I remember the She Wolf of London is on there. Of
Yeah.
course, there's also a She Wolf of London TV show, so I could be getting those confused as well.
But there is one though that was made I think before the Wolfman, and it's actually pretty good, but it looks a lot different. I think that one might be Werewolf of London, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be.
Yeah.
That's why I say I can't remember anymore because I more or less have watched the Mummy films and the Frankenstein films the most out of the Legacy collection, and some of the other ones because I just bought them all to have them all.
Right, yeah.
I haven't gone back to rewatch unless it's the original movie. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, Dave, is there anything else you would like to discuss between this film, The Creature Walks Among Us, or any of the other creature movies in the franchise? Because we kind of touched upon all of the movies repeatedly on each of the episodes that we've done on these films.
I think I covered everything that I had. So, I'd say no on that.
And everyone listening, that's how Dave. We all know Dave's done with the movie because he always says he's covered everything. He's good. All right. So with that, everybody, we like to rate the movies between 1 and 5 stars. 1 being very poor, 5 stars being essentially amazing. Where on the spectrum, Dave, do you place The Creature Walks Among Us?
Now, I will say that I do like this one better than the second one because of the characters, and I agree that the creature getting turned that part when they're experimenting on him is a little hokey, and some of it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do like the ideas behind it. They try to be more creative with it. But I'm going to give it the same as I did the second one, which is 3 stars.
After our conversation, Dave, I was going to give it 3 stars as well. Originally, if we had not had a conversation, I was going to give it 2 stars because this is the one I did not like the most. But after our conversation, my ideals behind the film have changed, especially considering we've just talked about the second and third film relatively soon after each other. And so and this is why talking about these type of films, listeners, is very interesting and engaging, because it can change your outlook on what you see in these type of films. You may have thought the film was bad, but hearing someone else talk about it may open your eyes to other possibilities. It kind of like this film was marred for me because I just didn't like the way that the creature looked when he became human. But that does not dismiss the fact that the story elements for this one are much better realized than some of the other stuff in some of the other films. And the human characters in this film are much more interesting because there is a much more diverse group of them, and they don't all have the same agenda. Having an actual human be like the main villain, like he is a despicable human, adds a different level to the film that wasn't there before, because they are really playing up some of the sympathies on the creature in this movie. If you thought they were being really harsh the first 2 movies, this one they play up some sympathies, and it's a great ending for the franchise, in my opinion. Now that I can enjoy all 3 of them as like one of the few franchises in the Universal monster movies that actually seems to all gel, in my opinion now.
Yeah.
So with that, everyone, I want to thank you, Dave, for joining us on Conversations in Horror to discuss not only The Creature Walks Among Us, but all of the movies in the Creature from the Black Lagoon franchise. We hope that you will go out and seek out those previous episodes for the other 2 movies. We hope that you'll go out there and actually watch these movies, not just these movies, but other movies in the Universal horror franchise. Make sure to check out all of our previous episodes on the podcast through your favorite podcast app, on Spotify or YouTube. Also, make sure to check out our sister podcast, Conversations in 4 Color, which delves deep into comic books, manga, and graphic novels. That is our Patreon exclusive podcast, which you can only listen to if you are a subscriber or a follower. So make sure you subscribe to that one as well. From all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment and Conversations in Horror, we want to wish you a pleasant day and keep enjoying those Universal horror movies and rewatching them and appreciating them for the amazing films that they were for the time period they were made. Thank you so much and have a great day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.